Hello, I'm Jerry Fort. Welcome to Jungle Jerry's Treehouse. This is the next book, Magic Treehouse number 32, A Merlin Mission, Winter of the Ice Wizard by Mary Pope Osborne. Like I mentioned at the end of the last one, Sea Serpent one, this guy kind of looks like Santa Claus, like a pirate Santa Claus. Okay, let's see what this is all about. It says up here, I guess this tells a little bit about it. Winter of the Ice Wizard. Merlin the Magician and Morgan Le Fay have mysteriously disappeared. To find them, Jack and Annie journey with their friends Teddy and Kathleen to a frozen kingdom of ice and snow. There they must go on a mission for the one-eyed ice wizard. Chased by wolves and braving terrible storms, they have only two things to help them: a magic rope and the ice wizard's strange rhyme. Take my sleigh and find your way to the house of the Norns in the curve of the in the curve of the bay. Pay them whatever they tell you to pay. Then bring back my eye by break of day. Weird. See if we can get that yawn out of the way. Chapter 1. The Winter Solstice. A cold wind rattled the window panes, but inside the house it was warm and cozy. Jack and Annie were making Christmas cookies with their mom. Jack pressed a star-shaped cookie cutter into the dough. "Hey, it's snowing outside," said Annie. Jack looked out the window. Huge snowflakes were falling from the late afternoon sky. "You want to go out?" asked Annie. "Not really. It'll be dark soon," said Jack. "That's right," said their mom. "Today's the first day of winter. It's the shortest day of the year." Jack's heart skipped a beat. "You mean it's the winter solstice?" he said. "Yes," said their mom. Annie gasped. "The winter solstice?" she said. "Yes," their mom said, puzzled. Jack and Annie looked at each other. Last summer, Merlin the Magician had called for their help on the summer solstice. Maybe he would need them again today. Jack put down the cookie cutter and wiped his hands on a towel. "Actually, Mom, it might be fun to play in the snow for just a few minutes," he said. "Whatever you want," their mom said. "Just dress warmly. I'll finish up with the cookies and put them in the oven." "Thanks," said Jack. He and Annie raced to the closet and pulled on their boots. They threw on their jackets, scarves, gloves, and caps. "Be home before dark," their mom said. "We will," called Jack. "Bye, Mom," Annie shouted. Jack and Annie slipped out their house into the snowy cold. Their boots squeaked as they ran across their white yard and headed toward the Frog Creek woods. At the edge of the woods, Jack stopped. He couldn't believe how beautiful the trees looked. White powder covered the branches of the hemlocks and pines. "Look," said Annie. She pointed to two pairs of footprints that led out to the road and then back into the woods. "Somebody else has been here." "It looks like they were walking out of the woods, but turned back," said Jack. "Let's hurry. If the Magic Treehouse had come back today, he didn't want anyone else finding it first." Jack and Annie walked quickly through the woods, following the two sets of footprints. "Oh, gosh." "Stop," said Annie. She pulled Jack behind a tree. "Over there." Jack and Annie's hiding over here. Here's these two strangers walking over here toward their rope ladder. Through the falling snow, Jack saw two people in long, dark cloaks. They were hurrying toward a tall oak, and high in the oak was the magic treehouse. "Oh no," said Jack. The treehouse was back, and someone else had found it. "Hey," Jack yelled, "stop!" The treehouse had come for him and Annie, no one else. Jack started running. Annie followed. Jack slipped and fell in the snow, but he scrambled up and kept going. By the time he and Annie got to the treehouse, the two people had climbed up the rope ladder and disappeared inside. "Come out!" Jack yelled. "This is our treehouse!" shouted Annie. Two kids poked their heads out of the treehouse window. They both looked like they were about 13 years old. The boy had tousled red hair and freckles. The girl had sea blue eyes and long curly black hair. Their cheeks were rosy from the cold. They laughed when they saw Jack and Annie. "Excellent," said the boy. "We came to find you, but you have found us instead." "Teddy?" cried Annie. "Kathleen?" "Hi." Teddy was the young sorcerer who worked with Morgan in her library in Camelot. Kathleen was the enchanted Selkie girl who'd helped Jack and Annie on the summer solstice by magically turning them all into seals. Jack was stunned. He had never imagined that their two friends from Camelot might someday visit Frog Creek. "What are you guys doing here?" he shouted. "Climb up and we will tell you," said Teddy. Jack and Annie hurried up the rope ladder. Then they climbed inside the treehouse. Annie threw her arms around Teddy and Kathleen. "I can't believe you came to visit us," she said. "It pleases me to see you, Annie," said Kathleen, "and you also, Jack." Her large blue eyes sparkled. "It pleases me too," Jack said shyly. He still thought Kathleen was the most beautiful girl he'd ever seen. Even when she'd been a seal, she'd been lovely. "We went looking for you," said Teddy. "We climbed down and walked through the woods to a road, but the road was full of monsters," said Kathleen. "A big red creature nearly ran over us. It made a honking sound." Then before we knew it, a giant black monster charged at us. It had a ferocious growl, said Teddy. "We came back here to gather our wits." "Those weren't monsters," said Annie, laughing. "They were just cars." "Cars? Cars?" said Teddy. "Yeah, they have motors and people drive them," said Jack. "Motors?" said Teddy. "It's hard to explain," said Annie. "Just remember, in our world, you have to watch out for cars every time you cross a road." "Indeed we will," said Teddy. "Why have you come here?" asked Jack. "We found a message for you in Merlin's chambers," said Teddy, "and decided to deliver it ourselves. So we climbed into the treehouse outside Morgan's library," said Kathleen. Teddy pointed to the Frog Creek woods in the message and made a wish to come here. The next thing we knew, we were here in these woods. Teddy pulled a small gray stone from his cloak. "And this is the message we brought you," he said. Jack took the stone from Teddy. The message was written in tiny handwriting. Jack read it aloud. "To Jack and Annie of Frog Creek, my staff of strength has been stolen. On the winter solstice, journey to the land behind the clouds. Travel toward the setting sun and retrieve my staff, or all will be lost. Merlin." "Oh, wow," said Annie. "That sounds serious." "Yeah," said Jack. "But why didn't Merlin send us the message himself?" "We do not know," said Teddy. "Neither Merlin nor Morgan has been seen for days." "Where did they go?" asked Annie. "'Tis a mystery," said Teddy. "Last week I journeyed to the Selkie Cove to bring Kathleen to Camelot. She is going to be a helper in Morgan's library, but when we returned we could not find Merlin or Morgan." "We only found this message for you," said Kathleen. "Aye, and I thought that when Merlin does return," said Teddy, "he will be greatly pleased to have his staff back. Oh, gosh. Much of his power comes from its ancient and mysterious magic." "Wow," said Annie. "In his message, he tells us to go to the land behind the clouds," said Jack. "Where's that?" "'Tis a land far north of my cove," said Kathleen. "I have never journeyed there." "Nor I," said Teddy, "but I have read about it in Morgan's books. 'Tis as bleak as a frozen white desert. I am eager to see it for myself." So you and Kathleen are coming with us, said Annie. Indeed, said Kathleen. Oh, no, sorry. Let me read that part again. So you and Kathleen are coming with us, said Annie. Indeed, said Kathleen. Great, said Jack and Annie together. If we all work together, we can do anything. Aye, said Teddy. Aye, said Annie. I hope so, thought Jack. Annie pointed at the words, land behind the clouds in Merlin's message. Okay, ready? She said to the others. Yes, said Kathleen. I guess so, said Jack. Onward, said Teddy. I wish we could all go there, Annie said. The treehouse started to spin. It went faster and faster. Then everything was still. Absolutely still. Chapter 2. Land behind the clouds. Jack felt the sharp bite of an icy wind. He looked out the window at the others. Oh, man, he whispered. The treehouse was not in a tree, for there were no trees anywhere to be seen. Instead, it was sitting high on top of a steep snowdrift. Other drifts rose and fell across a vast snowy plain. Beyond the plain were hills and mountains. The books were right, said Teddy, his teeth chattering. 'Tis bleak here indeed. No, 'tis lovely, said Kathleen. 'Tis the land where the northern seal people live. Cool, said Annie. Jack dug his hands into his pockets. He agreed with Teddy. The land did seem bleak and freezing. I wonder where Merlin's staff of strength is, he said, shivering. Let us begin our search, said Kathleen. The message tells us we must travel toward the setting sun. Kathleen climbed out of the treehouse window. She gathered her cloak around her and sat down on top of the snowdrift. Then she pushed off and slid down the steep slope. Oh, wow, wait for me, called Annie. She climbed out of the window and followed Kathleen. Whooping, she slid down the bottom of the snowdrift. Come on, you guys, it's fun, she shouted. Jack and Teddy looked at each other. Shall we? Said Teddy. Jack nodded. He pulled his scarf tighter around his neck and followed Teddy out of the window. Jack and Teddy sat down side by side. They pushed off and slid down the icy drift. Jack couldn't help whooping too. Woo! It was fun. At the bottom of the drift, Jack and Teddy scrambled to their feet. Jack brushed the snow off his clothes. He could see his breath in the frigid air. It's just a little chilly, said Annie, hugging herself. Only Kathleen seemed not to mind the cold. She was smiling as she lay on the ground, gazing up at the sky. Her seal nature probably keeps her warm, Jack thought with envy. Teddy peered across the snowy plain. I believe not one living creature is here but us, he said. Not true at all, said Kathleen. She pointed upward. I see snow geese and whistling swans. I can almost see them too, said Annie. Kathleen stood up. She shielded her eyes and gazed across the plain. The cold sun was low in the sky. It cast long blue shadows beneath the snowdrifts. She pointed into the distance. And see, a white hare is leaping home before dark, she said. Jack looked where Kathleen pointed, but he couldn't see anything moving at all. I see a snowy owl too, said Kathleen. And, oh no. What? Said Annie. Wolves, Kathleen said with a shudder. They just disappeared behind a snowdrift. My people greatly fear the wolves. You need not be afraid. I shall protect you, said Teddy. He took Kathleen's hand. Come, let us make haste toward the sun. Together, Teddy and Kathleen headed across the snow-covered plain. Their woolen cloaks waved behind them. Annie and Jack dug their hands in their pockets and quickly followed them toward the setting sun. As Teddy, Kathleen, Jack, and Annie trudged across the frozen plain, the sun sank closer and closer to the horizon. Its last rays poured purple-pink light over the snow. The wind blew against Jack's face. He looked down and kept walking. The cold felt like needles on his skin. Each icy breath was painful. He hoped they found Merlin's staff of strength soon. He couldn't imagine anyone surviving long in this lonely, freezing land. Jack's thoughts were interrupted when he heard Annie calling. He looked up. The sun had completely slipped behind the horizon. In the cold twilight, the snow had faded from purple-pink to a dark shade of blue. "Jack, come look," Annie called. She, Teddy, and Kathleen were standing on the slope of a huge snowdrift. Jack hurried to join them. "Look," said Annie. "Oh, man," Jack said softly. On the other side of the snowdrift was a glimmering palace made from huge blocks of ice. Wow. Beneath the rising moon, its gleaming spires pierced the blue dusk. "I wonder who lives there," said Jack. Let us go and find out," said Teddy. Teddy led the way down the slope to the ice palace. Long icicles hung like spears in front of the entrance. "It seems no one has visited this place in quite a while," said Kathleen. "Indeed," said Teddy. He broke off several icicles and they clattered to the ground. "Onward," he said. The others nodded. Kicking aside the chunks of ice, Teddy led them all into the ice palace. Chapter 3. The Ice Wizard. The air inside the palace was even colder than the air outside. Moonlight flooded through tall arches in the walls. The floor shined like a skating rink. Thick columns of sparkling ice held up a domed ceiling. "Welcome, Jack and Annie," boomed a voice from beyond the columns. Jack gasped. "Is that Merlin?" he whispered. It does not sound like Merlin," whispered Teddy. "But how does he know our names?" whispered Annie. "Come, Jack and Annie, I have been waiting for you," bellowed the voice. "Maybe it is Merlin," said Annie. "Maybe he's just using a different voice. Come on." "Annie, wait," Jack called, but Annie had already disappeared into the sparkly room. "We have to follow her," he said to Teddy and Kathleen. The three of them hurried after Annie. Beyond the columns, steps made of carved ice led up to a platform. Sitting on a throne on the platform was a huge bearded man. The man on the throne was definitely not Merlin. He was dressed in a worn robe trimmed with dirty fur. He had a rugged, weather-beaten face, a bushy beard, and a black eye patch. He leaned forward and glared down at Annie with his one good eye. "Who are you?" he demanded. "I was expecting Jack and Annie of Frog Creek." Annie stepped toward the throne. "I am Annie, and he's Jack," she said. "And these are our friends, Teddy and Kathleen. We come in peace." "Annie? Jack?" the man snorted. You are not Annie and Jack. You are far too small." "We're not so small," said Annie. "I'm 9. Jack's 10. "But you're children," the man said with scorn. Jack and Annie are heroes." Oh, that's what he said. "Jack and Annie are heroes." "Well, I don't know if I'd call us heroes," said Annie, "but we sometimes help Merlin and Morgan Le Fay." "Annie, shh," said Jack. He didn't trust the man on the throne and worried that Annie was saying too much. But Annie went on. "In fact, Merlin told us to come to the land behind the clouds today," she said. "He sent us a message written on a stone." "Ah," said the man on the throne. "Perhaps you really are Jack and Annie." He leaned forward and spoke in a low voice. I don't know, is this Jack reading this? see. He leaned forward and spoke in a low voice. Okay. I think this is Annie saying this. Let's see. To Jack and Annie of Frog Creek, my staff of strength has been stolen. On the winter solstice journey to the land behind the clouds, travel toward the setting sun and retrieve my staff, or all will be lost. Jack didn't understand how. How do I know what was in Merlin's message? The man said. Oh. I know because I wrote it myself. I hoped it would find its way to you somehow. Jack stepped back. So Merlin hadn't sent them on this mission at all? The weird man on the throne had tricked them? Who are you? Demanded Teddy. I am the Weiss Wizard, said the man. The Wizard of Winter. Teddy gulped. Oh no, thought Jack. They had heard about this wizard on their past Merlin missions. It was the Wizard of Winter who had put a spell on the Raven King and who had stolen the Sword of Light. The wizard glanced coldly from Teddy to Kathleen. And who are you? And who are you two? And who are the two of you? I am Teddy of Camelot, said Teddy. I am an apprentice to Morgan Le Fay in training to be a sorcerer myself. A sorcerer? Said the wizard. Yes, said Teddy. My father was a sorcerer. My mother was a wood sprite. And I am a Selkie, said Kathleen, one of the ancient seal people. So you are both from my world, said the ice wizard. You are of no use to me. He looked back at Jack and Annie. I am interested only in the two mortals, Jack and Annie of Frog Creek. Why are you interested in us? Said Jack. Because of what you have done for Merlin, bellowed the ice wizard. For Merlin you found the water of memory and imagination. For Merlin you found the diamond of destiny. For Merlin you found the sword of light. Now I want you to find something for me. What do you want us to find? Asked Annie. The ice wizard grabbed the black patch covering his left eye. He yanked it off, revealing a dark, empty socket underneath. Yikes, Annie said softly. I want you to find my eye, the ice wizard said. Oh, man, said Jack. He was horrified. Are you quite serious? Said Teddy. You want them to find your eye? The wizard covered his empty eye socket with the patch again. Yes, he said. I want Jack and Annie to find my eye and bring it back to me. But why? Said Jack. Even if we found it, we couldn't make it work. We're not medical experts or anything. And anyway, why can't you get your eye yourself? Said Annie. You are a wizard. Do not question my orders, the wizard roared at her. Hey, don't yell at my sister, said Jack. The wizard raised a bushy eyebrow. You are brother and sister, he said. Yes, said Jack. The wizard nodded slowly. His voice grew softer. And you protect your sister, he said. We protect each other, said Jack. I see, whispered the wizard. Then his voice turned gruff again. Long ago I traded my eye for something I wanted very much. But I never got what I wanted. So now I want my eye back. Who did you trade with? Asked Annie. The Fates, said the wizard. I traded with the Fates. But they cheated me. And that is why I sent for you and Jack. You must go to the Fates and find my eye, and you must go alone. Why alone? Asked Jack. Because only mortals can undo a bargain with the Fates, said the ice wizard. Not wizards like me, nor seal girls, nor the sons of sorcerers like your two friends. But Jack and I succeeded in our other missions because Teddy and Kathleen, or Morgan and Merlin, helped us, said Annie. What kind of help did they give you? Said the wizard. Well, mostly magic rhymes and riddles, said Annie. Ah, then I shall do the same, said the wizard. He thought for a moment, then leaned forward on his throne. In a growly voice he said, Take my sleigh and find your way to the house of the Norns in the curve of the bay. Pay them whatever they tell you to pay, and bring back my eye by break of day. The wizard reached into the folds of his ragged robe and pulled out a thick string with a row of knots. This wind string will speed you on your journey, he said. He tossed the string to Jack. What's a wind string? Jack wondered. And who are the Norns? Before Jack could ask any questions, the ice wizard pointed at them. Now listen carefully to this warning, he said. Beware the white wolves of the night. They may follow you on your quest. Never let them catch up with you. If they catch you, they will eat you. Jack felt a chill run down his spine. The ice wizard picked up a carved wooden stick from the floor beside his throne. Its smooth, polished wood glowed in the moonlight. Teddy gasped. "'Tis Merlin's staff of strength," he said. "Indeed," said the wizard. He turned to Jack and Annie. "Go now and find my eye," he said, "or you will never see Merlin and Morgan Le Fay again." "What have you done with them?" cried Annie. The wizard stared at her coldly. "I will not tell you," he said. "You will see them again only if you return my eye before the break of day." "But," said Annie. "No more questions," said the wizard. "Be on your way." Before any of them could speak, the ice wizard slashed the air with Merlin's staff of strength and shouted out a spell. "Ow nigh!" A flash of blue fire shot from the end of the staff. In an instant, Jack, Annie, Teddy, and Kathleen found themselves outside the palace in the freezing night. Whew. Man, that's crazy, isn't it? Okay, we're going to stop at chapter 4, Take My Sleigh. Let's put a bookmark there. What do you think of that story? So he's not a good person. I was wondering if he was. Doesn't sound like he is. Maybe Jack and Annie, Teddy and Kathleen can make him a good person. Excuse me. Okay, I'm going to end it there. I thank you all for watching. Thank you all for listening. And we will see you on the next one. Be sure to stay tuned. Bye.